Greetings people of YouTube and welcome back to my channel, where in this video I'm not gonna have any face cam. The reason as to why is because nobody cares. It's just to save time on editing videos because I'm a little busy on college now. Anyways, today I'm going to be taking a look at the Transformers Studio Series Gamer Edition Voyager Class Megatron. This is an action figure representation of one of my favorite depictions of Megatron, that being the War for Cybertron game version. And I'm pretty excited for this figure. Well, at least I was. The reviews for this figure seem to be pretty mixed, so I am a little bit doubtful. But no matter, we shall proceed and take a look at the box here. Badass artwork of Megatron from the game there, along with Megatron himself. On this side, another artwork of Megatron. At the back, some fairly promising product shots there. On this side, you get another artwork of Megatron. At the top, Transformers War for Cybertron title card. And at the bottom is as always. So without any further ado, why don't we just crack this thing open? And here's the Transformers Studio Series Gamer Edition Voyager Class Megatron out of his packaging. And I gotta say, despite the mixed reviews, I find this figure to be pretty enjoyable. Aesthetically, he is a bit problematic, but gosh darn, he is pretty fun to play with. So of course, as always, we shall take a look at his accessories. Here's his backdrop accessory, and this is supposed to depict one of the levels from the games. Can't quite remember which one it is, but I guess it's pretty cool. Throw it off to the side. Megatron also comes with his fusion cannon and this Energon mace. And here's taking a look at his fusion cannon. Definitely one of my least favorite part about this figure. Barely got any sculpted details, barely any paint details. And if you attach it to his forearm, it looks incredibly puny. I really don't like how this fusion cannon looks. Or what you can also do with this fusion cannon, now you get this, what is this? Alright, that's enough about this fusion cannon. And now we go to my favorite accessory that comes with this figure, this Energon mace. The sculpt work is really great. You can actually hurt someone with this. Paint detail is a little underwhelming, looks a little cheap to be honest, but it's definitely better than having no paint at all. I mean, technically this is painted. It's cast in gray plastic, but the entirety of it is painted black. Why couldn't it have just been cast black plastic? Whatever the hell. Also, the thing actually came in two pieces, just like 2007 Jazz. And once you've got it attached, you cannot rotate it as the peg is rectangular. So yeah, that was worth pointing out. And if we plug it into either one of his hands, it doesn't really matter. He's gonna look really cool on your shelf. At least depends on how much you like the aesthetics of this figure in the first place. Speaking of which, and now that I am done with his accessories, let's take a closer look at the figure itself. And here's Megatron compared to some shots of his in-game model. And you know what? His proportions are actually pretty darn accurate. This version of Megatron does seem to be a little slimmer than the Fall Cybertron version, and I think this figure here did an okay job with that. Granted, some joints are going to look a little bit wonky, especially when you get to the elbows. I think overall, sculpt-wise, this is a pretty decent representation of the War for Cybertron Megatron. The upper body is a little bit long, but it's accurate, and the entire lower section just looks dead on to the games in my opinion. Also, it would have been pretty cool if he had come with the X12 Scrap Maker. That is actually the weapon that he used to defeat Omega Supreme with in the game, but no matter, his fusion cannon is more iconic anyways. Right, sorry, going off tangent here. Now, the biggest issue I have with the figure, aside from some wonky joints, would be his paint. Because my gosh, this gray is so darn boring. If we take a look again at the model here, you can see that he's covered in this really nice metallic sheen. I really wish they would have coated him in something along the lines of this Rise of the Beasts Rhinox. Something along the lines of this would look really great for this Megatron. Because aside from that and the fusion cannon and some of the wonky joints, yeah, I know I have some problems with this guy. I think this Megatron is pretty cool. Taking a look at the head sculpt here is really accurate to the game. The arms are appropriately asymmetrical, and again, I love this whole bottom section with the treads here. And if we turn this figure around, you can see that the back elbow isn't annoyingly obtrusive. Not entirely accurate to the game, I'm fully aware of that, and it doesn't even have a sculpted in Decepticon insignia. But if I may indulge in a little cope, you open it up, and these sculpted lines kind of look like an upside down Decepticon insignia. Yeah, I know it's not that much. So in my opinion, aesthetic wise, this thing is pretty dang good. May not be as good as Optimus Prime, but it is a huge improvement compared to Barricade. But what he has over Optimus Prime is that he feels so much better. What even is this waist swivel? Every joint on this guy feels really nice, really tight, with this left shoulder in particular being a somewhat notable exception, but still it's not enough to ruin the figure. And of course, with good stability comes good posability, which immediately gets thrown out the window when you consider that this head is on a really weak ball joint. Can't move up, can't move down, no side to side, a mere swivel. It is on a ball joint, but the sculpt work really does compromise it. Shoulders can move outward, this the loose one can rotate 360. Double jointed elbow due to the transformation. Shit, not a big deal. That is actually the first time that has happened to me. Anyways, you get a double jointed elbow due to the transformation. There you go. To be honest, a single joint is enough. Again, this is mostly for the transformation. And you get a rotation here, which depending on which joint you bend, can be a forearm rotation or an elbow rotation. Nothing at the wrist, that's dumb. Waist swivel that is really nice to move, way better than the Optimus Prime in my opinion. A really good kick, can move back just as much. Of course, he can do the splits, knee rotation. And another point of contention that people have with this figure, the knees can only bend this much. Now the reason for this travesty is because of this hook sculpt right here, which according to the TF Wiki, it will not detriment the figure if you cut this piece out. Though that's what I did on this side. You can see that it's just a little nub now, and the knee bends so much further. So yes, in this case, I do actually recommend ruining your figure. If you, for whatever reason, do not want to ruin your figure, what you can do to deepen this knee bend is to detach this calf section, bend the knee, and close this back in. It looks really messy, so I don't like doing that. And after this review, I will indeed snap off this tab as well. Finally, for the angles, moves down, moves up, a little bit of pivot, downward toe joint, and you can manipulate this whole piece as a heel spur. Posability on this guy is overall really good. Not as good as the Gamer Edition Optimus Prime, but it's way better than the Gamer Edition Barricade. Speaking of which, why don't we get into some size comparisons? Here is Gamer Edition Megatron next to another Cybertronian Decepticon, the Bumblebee movie Starscream. My deepest condolences to former Cybertron Starscream fans, including myself. Here he is next to the Gamer Edition Barricade. And now all I need is a War for Cybertron brawl to recreate one of my favorite scenes from the game. Decepticons, receive your birth certificate. Here he is next to the Earthrise G1 inspired Megatron, which is a much bigger figure. Still though, what a great reinterpretation of a classic design. Comparing him to a regular 6-inch scale figure, we have the Marvel Legends Mr. Knight. And finally, here he is next to the Gamer Edition Optimus Prime. My goodness, these two look fantastic next to each other. I'd say Optimus Prime is a better figure overall, and definitely much more fitting for a Voyager class price point, but this Megatron complements him really well. For my first ever Optimus and Megatron display, I am really satisfied with this. And now that I am done with the robot mode, we shall get through this not so fun transformation, unfortunately. And here's the Gamer Edition Megatron in his Cybertronian tank mode. That transformation was kind of a bitch, don't you think? It really is only the final parts of the transformation where you had to close in these legs. It's really hard to explain, there's not really much tabs you can rely on. You really do have to feel it for yourself. Like this tab you wouldn't even plug in. Ew. But after all that stupidness, I gotta say this alt mode is worth it. As you've probably seen in my previous Gamer Edition reviews, I love these Cybertronian alt modes. This tank mode being no exception. I love how they nailed the angular proportions of those War for Cybertron tanks in this figure. These back spikes here really add some menace to the design. And you know what? The fusion cannon in this mode is actually not that bad. Still could have used some purple axis TBH. Yeah, the figure all around does look pretty darn great. Aside from the back. It's not as bad as the likes of Optimus Prime, but I do see a lot of room for improvements here, quite literally. And this alt mode does have a room for this mace. Plug it in just like so. Ow. Or if you want to go even crazier with it, plug it into the cannon. As a display item, this does look great, but as a playable toy, not the best, especially considering we don't even have rolling treads. It would have been pretty awesome if they could have given us some blast effects to put into these thrusters, because you know in the game this tank would constantly hover and there would be purple energon effects sprouting out of these thrusters. But whatever, as it stands, I can absolutely live with this alt mode. And overall, it is a pretty good alt mode, and with a good alt mode comes a good size comparison session. Here's Megatron next to Starscream, which has a pretty huge looking alt mode here. I could not imagine living in a world where Starscream towers over Megatron. I'm stupid! Here he is next to Barricade, which again does look a bit big, doesn't he? Still though, these two look really cool next to each other. Again, with the addition of a War for Cybertron Brawl, you'll be able to recreate the first level of the game, and I can't wait to get that figure, especially if it can combine into a Bruticus maybe. Here's the Earthrise Megatron. This is the better looking tank emote considering what they're both supposed to be. Here's Mr. Knight. And finally, the Gamer Edition Optimus Prime. These two look fantastic next to each other even in their alt modes. Kind of a shame that in War for Cybertron the final battle wasn't against Megatron and instead was against Trypticon. I've seen that in Fall of Cybertron, Megatron was actually the final boss, so I guess that's pretty good. And before I wrap up this review, inspired by my Bludgeon review, I will have a new segment here called Strike a Pose. A segment in which I will showcase a figure's posability by putting them in various poses, so that you guys can see how posable or not posable a figure actually is. So with Megatron here, let's strike a couple of poses now. Let's do the classic Megatron cannon shooting pose first. Hell yeah, that worked. Now let's do a default stand from the War for Cybertron game. Yeah, that seems to work just fine. Taking a look from the back, and it does look pretty good. And finally, let's try a slightly more dynamic pose. In the game, he would usually hold his mace in his right hand, like he's about to strike down. Head posability is not great though. And bada bang, that does look really cool, doesn't it? I don't have any flight stand to plug this guy into, unfortunately. And there goes my review for the Transformers Studio Series Gamer Edition Voyager Class War for Cybertron Megatron figure. At the end of the day, I had a lot of fun with this figure. I can definitely see some of the criticisms that people have about him, but on his own, if we don't compare him to the old deluxe class figure, it's a pretty well done figure on its own in my opinion. So if you are a fan of the War for Cybertron video game and you've not gotten the 2010 deluxe class figure, then this figure would fit your shelf perfectly fine. Thank you so much for watching my videos, and hopefully you all will recommend this review to anyone else. If you've enjoyed it, feel free to leave a like and a comment. Don't forget to click that subscribe button, of course. And hopefully I will see you all next time. Goodbye! Next video is going to be another throwback review, but don't you guys worry, the figure I'm reviewing next definitely has to touch. You